Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Bad Blind Moms. I'm Bridgit Kenning-Polpeter.
And I'm Stacy Cervenka, and we're just two blind moms trying our best and getting it all wrong. And today we have with us another badass blind mom, Lynn Baillif. Lynn, can you introduce yourself a little bit today?
Hi, everybody. My name's Lynn, and I live in Baltimore. I have two teenagers. I have a 16-year-old boy and a 14-year-old girl. So we got the whole teenage adventure going on now. And I am a registered dietitian. I've been a registered dietitian for over 25 years. And currently I have my own private practice and I do consulting work.
Excellent. And you're also a diabetes educator, is that correct?
Yes, I have been certified in the past, and unfortunately I let my certification lapse, but at the moment I am studying to retake the certification examinations, so I will officially again be a certified diabetes care and education specialist. That's a mouthful.
Wow. That's really cool though. Yeah. So Lynn, can you tell us a little bit more about what a dietitian does?
Sure. So a dietitian is basically the nutrition expert on your medical team. And what we do is we get to know every client, learn about your eating habits, your lifestyle, what else going on with you, as well as your medical history. And then we will work together to develop a healthy meal plan that will help address any health problems or concerns that you have.
Excellent. Now, when we posted about this in several different blind parent spaces, far and away, the most common question we got was, where can a parent even start if they are, extremely busy with, kids' activities, or they have lots of things going on in their life, they want to eat healthy, and they're also on a limited budget. I know that's a tall order, but I know that's the case for many of us moms. We might be, eating healthfully can be extremely expensive. So how can we do meal planning in a way that's healthy for us, healthy for our families, but doesn't completely break our budget?
There's a lot of things you can do to keep that grocery budget under control. And I know with, food costs have really gone up, so it is really challenging. So the first and most important thing is to make a plan. Before you go to the store, plan on what you're going to have for your meals and your snacks in the upcoming week or whatever period there is between your grocery trips. That way you can make your list from that plan, and you're not going to be buying extra food that you don't need and you end up throwing away. And when you go to the grocery store, a lot of times it's cheaper to buy things in bulk. For example, if you buy chicken, it's easier to buy a larger pack of it than a smaller pack. You want to compare the unit price on all of your products, though, to make sure that that larger pack really is cheaper, because sometimes they'll get you and you're really not saving any money. If you buy larger packs of meat, you can either, when you bring it home, you can cook it ahead of time and then stick it in the freezer. My favorite example with that is ground meat, whether you buy ground turkey or ground beef. You can make, chili and sloppy joes and pasta sauce, on maybe a Sunday when you have some time, stick it in containers in your freezer. And that way, when those nights when you've got, soccer practice for the kids and you're running around like a chicken with your head cut off, you've got something kind of ready in there to just start with. Another tip is just buying less foods that tend to be less expensive. So think about canned beans, chicken, eggs, peanut butter, those sorts of things for your protein. And then with fruits and vegetables, buy what's in season, usually is cheaper. And don't forget about frozen vegetables and fruit that's canned in natural juice, because they're often a lot cheaper and tend to go on sale, so you can stock up.
Now, I have a quick question for you for myself. I often in the morning, I'll have myself, some orange juice, and it's, it says it's from concentrate. It's not, I don't buy it in concentrate, but it says it is. It says it's all 100% natural. Is that good for you? Because I always feel guilty when I do it. Like, is that is orange juice? I've heard different things. Like, do you think orange juice is a healthy thing to have in the morning?
So often for our kids, in order to get them to have some vitamin C, we need to give them orange juice or other 100% juice. But even with children, you want to limit that serving size of juice to 4 ounces. That's only half of a cup.
Okay.
It's that little bitty tiny juice glass that our parents have.
Yep.
That's not much juice.
Okay.
But for adults, it's really healthier to eat the fruit because in the fruit, you're going to get some fiber.
So does it help at all because often I think of it as an on the go, like, okay, I'll have my juice that'll like boost my sugar and hopefully it's not as bad as having should I just stop that entirely?
Yeah. I mean, if you're having, instead of eating a donut or a Pop-Tart, I would say absolutely have juice.
Stacy's like, am I making good life choices?
And you're like, I'm trying to tell you, you're actually not.
It just depends on the circumstance. I'm not saying that juice is always bad, but I would watch the circumstance.
Okay.
So I'm curious, Lynn, beyond, just making a list, writing it down, however you do that, do you have any like resources, websites, apps, what have you, that can maybe help in food planning and food budgeting and kind of creating these meal plans?
I don't have any particularly for creating meal plans, but I think as far as grocery lists go, one of my favorite tricks is I have an Amazon Alexa and I use her to make my list for me. And then it will go right to your phone into the Alexa app. And it's accessible and you can use that when you go to the store.
Yeah, we it's always a joke because several times on Bad Blind Moms, I've asked my Alexa a question and we have we almost have like one in every room. So it's a little excessive, but
yeah, I love it.
Bridget, do you want to go with the next one?
Yeah. So, okay. So this is actually, I've not heard of this, so I will be curious to know, but do you have any thoughts on if I am pronouncing this incorrectly, let me know, the Ellen Satter's approach to responsibility of division with food and children. So yeah.
Yeah, so I'm actually a big Ellen Satter fan. I used her books when my children were young. So Ellen Satter basically believes in developing a positive food relationship with your children from the time they're infants so that food doesn't become a struggle. And, as infants, she recommends starting to feed your infant baby cereal, baby rice cereal around 4 to 6 months. Your baby should be able to sit up by themselves and you kind of try it out. And if they're not interested in it, you just put it away and try again later. And with the rice cereal, she recommends that you start with it in a thinner consistency and then just build that consistency. So once your baby tolerates the thin consistency, you kind of make it a little lumpier and then you make it a little thicker. And she also believes that you should let your baby feed themselves. And I just sort of stumbled into that because my son, I tried on the first day. I got that little baby spoon out and he just stuck his hand in that cereal and fed himself. And I was like, okay, you go.
That's how we felt too. We were like, the more you feed yourself, the less we have to feed you. So
right, exactly. Yeah.
Finger foods, because it was like, okay, great.
The only problem is that baby cereal, I swear, hardens to the consistency of concrete. And so I spent many a moment chiseling it off our kitchen floor.
Oh no.
But
yes,
a little mess, no problem. So you then, after the baby's tolerating the cereal, you just gradually increase the foods that you offer. So because they're already used to thicker and lumpy food, you don't have to do that smooth baby puree baby food. You can just move up to something like stage 2 baby food if you buy it in the jar. And the key is that over time, as your child ages, you introduce foods. If the child wants to eat them, great. If they don't, no problem. Don't make a fuss. once my kids were about a year old, I was basically feeding them dinner, at the family dinner table. And the key is to introduce foods by you as parents having them. So it's modeling behavior. If you don't like broccoli and you don't eat it, then your children aren't going to like broccoli or eat it either. So modeling food behaviors and then letting your children pick. So at each meal, you want to offer at least one food that your child likes. And that could be as simple as offering milk at the meal. And that way, if all your child does is fill up on milk, but they've been introduced to other foods, we just don't worry about it. We let the children sort of develop their taste by what's available and just continue to introduce it.
Excellent. And then do you have also then like a new food at each meal, or so you're saying you have one food that the kid likes, and then then you also have like one new food that you're introducing, or one food that they're not super crazy about, or kind of how do you?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of just eat whatever you would normally plan for your family. And if it's something that the child likes, like let's say you have chicken and your child likes chicken, well, that's good. And then maybe you throw in a vegetable that they're not crazy about, but that you and the rest of the family do like. And hopefully over time, they'll become interested in it. It's worked with my daughter. She's a very adventurous eater. She eats practically anything. I do have a very picky teenager. He never grew out of it. But I think that's just his personality.
And so I've been told in the past that it can take like 12 to 15 times of introducing a new food to a child before they might actually enjoy it. So does that pretty much ring true?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, don't get discouraged.
And I'll say, me and my family, we never really read any books about introducing food to kids. We always just did what our pediatrician said. Like we just asked our pediatrician, and she would tell us to do something, and we just did that. And I don't know if it had a name or, for Leo, our pediatrician wanted us to wait till he was 6 months old to start any solid foods. Where with Josephine, she wanted us to start at 4 months. And we started out with a little bit of rice cereal in her bottle, which some people are like, oh, that's a huge no-no. Some people are like, we've all been doing it for decades. It's fine. But I mean, it worked fine for my kids. And both our pediatricians recommended introducing vegetables first. And then fruits, because their thought was if you introduce fruits first, then all they're going to want is like that sweet taste. And I've since heard some people say that that's a myth, but that's just what we did. So we introduced, baby vegetables, and then baby fruits. And then we pretty much, as soon as we could get the kids to eat finger foods, we moved away from the pureed foods and did, cut up meat, like you said, Lynn, cut up chicken, cut up fruits and vegetables. And Leo, he actually had a dill pickle before he was 1 and still loves dill pickles. My kids both ate sushi at the age of 1, still like it. So we just kind of did what you said. Like if we were eating it for dinner, we've heard not to introduce shellfish to kids until they were 1. So we held off on that. Same with cow's milk. And I have no idea if those are old wives' tales, but that's what we chose to do. And now they're both fairly adventurous eaters. They both love sushi as much as we do, so that's nice.
Yeah. Sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
So yeah, I totally agree. You definitely want to hold off on cow's milk until a baby's 1. They just don't have the digestive ability to handle it very well. And as far as other allergen foods go, it really depends on your family history and your child. So that's a good thing to talk to your pediatrician about. I know that for children that are allergic to peanuts, they now recommend if runs in the family, that you actually introduce it at a younger age. But I would definitely talk to your pediatrician about those things.
Yeah, because my brother-in-law has a lot of allergies. And so we started with sunflower butter as opposed to peanut butter. I know we didn't do strawberries for a time. Because we'd heard that if there's something significant in family history, maybe to hold off. But yeah, I agree with what you're saying. Like you really have to work with your pediatrician on making what choices work for you. So I'm curious, what are some ways if maybe you didn't necessarily do these certain steps, do this process, or maybe now, because like in my situation, like my youngest, we did like the baby led weaning and all that. But now, and he wasn't a picky eater, and now he is. So how can you maybe encourage, a healthy relationship to food, and, adopting those kind of a more balanced approach to eating in kids who maybe you haven't always taken these steps with, or who are now picky eaters?
Yeah, I have to say that a lot of kids, even if they start out eating, every food in sight, typically become picky eaters at some point. And I think during those stages, you just sort of go with what they like. So let's say your kid goes through a stage where all they want to do is eat peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I mean, fine, give them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, but maybe, again, if it's a family meal, at dinner time, when the family's having a particular meal, don't be a short order cook. Just offer what there is for dinner, plus like something they like whether they like milk or bread, something that's easy but not a whole separate meal into itself. And I think that just kind of offering foods and the family eating foods and having something that they can fill their tummies with, they'll get past those picky things. And sometimes it takes until they're teenagers to eat like certain vegetables. My daughter wouldn't eat cabbage. She thought it was really gross, but now she's 14 and she eats it and she likes it. So some foods just take a while.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say my husband, I kid you not, was 29 before he'd eat anything except meat and potatoes. So
yeah, but he does
now he has quite the expansive culinary taste, thankfully. Awesome. But yeah, for quite a while I was like, oh dear God, please just grow up.
My husband didn't eat a vegetable until we got married.
Yeah.
So what you're kind of saying is then, like, the whole family would eat the same meal together for dinner, but you would make sure that, if the kid loves mashed potatoes, like if you're serving a meat that the kid's not always into, that maybe you would have mashed potatoes, you would have a certain kind of bread, or you would have milk, or you would have at least something on the plate that the child enjoys eating or will eat.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not, cook pork chops for everyone else and like SpaghettiOs for the one kid.
Yeah, you want to avoid that, because then the child is controlling your behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That sort of makes an imbalance in the food relationship.
Yeah, and it's hard. Like my oldest is autistic, and so some of his food pickiness is related to kind of like some sensory things. And I mean, we're even at a point where like if it's not the brand of peanut butter, peanut butter pretty much tastes the same regardless of what brand you get, but it's like, no, that's not the jar I'm used to. So it's like we always have to buy like the same thing, and it can take a while for him to adjust. Like if I start buying a new brand or product, because if he sees the packaging, he's like, whoa, that is not what we usually do. I'm like, it's the same thing. But like it's funny that you said, oh, if they like peanut butter and jelly, because right now my kids are eating peanut butter sandwiches basically 3 times a day. Like that's all they want. So, and at dinner, it's like, this is what I'm making for dinner. And we will let them have the peanut butter sandwich if they just refuse to eat the dinner. But, beyond the sandwich, I'm not making anything else, but we do try to get them to try what I have made. And usually we have to like I'll make a dessert. Like you don't get the dessert unless you try a couple bites of this food before having the sandwich. But I know, and Stacy's been around my kids plenty. They're very picky. Like it's a little wonky how picky of eaters they are. Like even normal, what you would consider kid foods, often my kids will not eat. So, and I think the little one is also does what brother does. So if brother doesn't like something, he's not going to eat it. So that's hard too. But yeah, it's like we're trying to incorporate, some adjustments and eating a little more balanced of a diet, but it's hard, especially when because my kids are 4 and 8. So they're very stubborn. It's a hard age.
Yeah,
So
and I mean,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
if you're dealing with a child, who has autism, it is challenging because that's just part of their, how
Right.
they are, that they want things to be consistent and the same. And so in that circumstance, I mean, exactly what you're doing, you're working within, the boundaries that your child has sort of set up. And I know my son has been very particular about the way food looks at times. I remember one time, he was eating saltine crackers and cheese, and he opened up one of the sleeves of saltine crackers and was like, "No, these are too brown. I'm not eating these."
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I'm like, "Those aren't brown at all. They're white."
So the two questions that kind of came to me off of what we said is, number one, so I guess if for other parents who have kids with autism, or who might have other sensory issues, and I know it's very individualized, and you might need to go to like a feeding therapist or a sensory integration therapist. Do you have any general guidance for parents who might have kids who are very particular about what they eat because of sensory issues?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you said, getting help from maybe a sensory therapist would be helpful, but I think you kind of have to go along in some way with the way your child feels, because they really feel like that food is not okay.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I definitely wouldn't force eating, of something that they're really opposed to. And I wouldn't, try not to make a big deal out of it. I wasn't pleased my son wasn't going to eat that sleeve of crackers, but we just stuck it in the cabinet, and my husband and I ate them. It was good.
No, what about saying, because I know that's something that we sometimes do too, and say, you know what, you cannot have ice cream unless you finish your dinner. Is that, I can think about ways that could be problematic. I guess, what are your thoughts about that? Like offering dessert as like a reward for eating dinner?
So, I mean, it's totally up to you. I think that if you're really looking to establish that positive relationship, it does give the parents some control. So one of the things Ellen Satter recommends is actually serving dessert with the meal. So the child can eat whatever they would like. Honestly, we never had dessert. It just was not something I was raised with. And so that was usually like a snack if they had, a cookie or ice cream. And we didn't use those things as encouragements for the meal. It's just, like I said, this wasn't the way I was brought up. But I think, sometimes if it works for you, you just have to go with it.
Excellent. All right. Well, I think we, let's look here at our questions. What suggestions do you have for kids who are picky eaters? So I think we're at question 6, Bridget, because we did the
yes. So obviously, women who are pregnant can experience gestational diabetes. So what suggestions, recommendations do you have for women who are going through that? Yeah, so gestation, excuse me, I've got a cat in the way. Put him down. He always wants to join Zoom. Aw. So gestational diabetes, I know when you're diagnosed with it, it can be a little alarming, but it can easily be managed, usually through a team approach with your OBGYN. And if possible, I would suggest seeing a registered dietitian to help you with the meal planning. So we do want, women with gestational diabetes to continue with all of the appropriate growth of pregnancy. It's just sometimes tweaking how you're eating and when you're eating to try to keep those blood sugars in range. I think the most important thing with gestational diabetes, I think sort of a place that we sort of forget about, is after a baby comes. And what will happen is at your postpartum appointment, the doctor will again check your glucose tolerance with that delicious beverage that they give you. Yeah, so it's orange juice or sometimes it's cola and it's sickening sweet. They'll do that again. And they're doing that to see if the diabetes has resolved. So gestational diabetes happens because there are certain hormones that your body makes when it's pregnant
in, around that 26, 28-week period that are normal hormones, but they do cause insulin resistance, which means you're making lots of insulin, but it's just not getting used up. And that's what causes the high sugars. So oftentimes at that postpartum appointment, your blood sugars are back to normal again. And so that's great. You just sort of, move on, your diabetes is gone. But for some people, they may have diabetes at that point. And, then you would just work with your primary care doctor to manage it, just like anybody else with diabetes. But like I said, most often it will resolve. The important thing, though, is if you've had a history of gestational diabetes, or you've had a history of having a baby that's larger than 9 pounds at term. So if you're 42 weeks when the baby's born, it's probably going to be larger. But if you deliver by 40 weeks, 9 pounds is kind of what they use as a cutoff. It increases your risk significantly for type 2 diabetes in the next 15 to 20 years.
Interesting.
Yeah, so you really want to try to lose the weight you gained while you're pregnant. And that is a tall order, and especially in that postpartum period where you're so tired. And try to increase your activity. So I usually encourage women, take that baby out for a walk, even if it's just around the block. That's what I would do. We lived on a big block, and I'd take that baby and put him in a stroller and go out for a walk. And that way you're close to home at any point. So if you need to go back home for something like a diaper change, you're not really that far away.
Yeah. And, it's interesting because I had gestational diabetes, and as a blind mom, I can say that kind of how it went for me is I also had hyperemesis gravidarum. So I was not able to keep down that chalky test drink that you're supposed to have. They called me in several times. I tried it several times and I just could not keep it down. So they ended up ordering me a Prodigy VoiceMate, I think it was, which was the talking glucometer. And instead of doing the drink, I had to record my blood sugar like 4 times a day for a certain number of days and then provide my doctor with that information. And then after doing that, she determined that I did have gestational diabetes. And, at first I was very, I'm not a diabetic otherwise. And so I was very concerned about, poking myself with a needle. I thought, am I going to be able to do this? And for the first few days, I actually had my husband do it for me because I just couldn't make myself do it. I just couldn't pull the trigger. And, I don't generally think of myself as being afraid of needles, but I just couldn't inflict myself with harm. And so eventually then I got to a little game that I'd play with myself where I'd say, okay, I'm gonna click it when I get to F, and I'd say the alphabet, and I'd be like A, B, C, D, E, and then I'd click it on F. So it was like a trigger. Or I'd say, okay, I'm gonna sing a little song, and I'd be like, twinkle, twinkle, little star, and I know I'd do it on star. And then, but that maybe after about a week or so, you just get so used to it and you start realizing that it's not that big a deal that, I probably went through the whole process in 30 seconds of, sticking myself, putting the blood on the little strip and putting the strip into the glucometer. So, it can be really, it can be tough to do that to yourself the first few times, but eventually if you just keep doing it, eventually it becomes nothing and it's just a part of your day. So I don't know, that's my experience.
Yeah, I think it's like anything else, the more you practice it, the easier it gets. And I always compare that, that feeling you get, you don't want to poke yourself because it's going to hurt. It reminds me of when I have a thing about popping balloons. I just can't pop a balloon. It just freaks me out. I think it's the same kind of thing.
Yeah, where you're it's hard to pull. For me, I think of it as pulling the trigger. It was hard to push the button and say, okay, I'm doing this to myself. But once you do it for about a week or so, it gets much better.
Well, and I will say, so I've been type 1 diabetic since I was 4. So 36 years now, I've had diabetes. I've been through a gambit of things. So by the time I was pregnant, I've been dealing with diabetes for a long time. And in this day and age, there are things called CGMs. They're continuous glucometers. So I have one. So it's this little sensor you wear on your body. And then there's an app that you don't have to poke your fingers, essentially, is what I'm saying. So that is something that if you have gestational diabetes, you can ask your doctor about. I will say, however, just to forewarn people, and Lynn, if you have more information, please feel free to jump in, but it can be a little tricky getting some insurance providers to cover a CGM if you're not a type 1. So even some type 2s have some challenges with that, getting their providers to want to cover it. Likely, there are 2 that are accessible for blind people. There's the Freestyle Libra and there's a Dexcom. The Libra is generally the ones that people who have type 2 or gestational diabetes would be using. So, but that's just a little something for anybody who has gestational diabetes. You could definitely talk to your doctor about and bring up, which would make it a lot easier for having, if you have to test your blood sugars.
Absolutely. I think that for type 2 and gestational diabetes, insurance usually doesn't want to pay for it unless you have something like hypoglycemia unawareness. So like you get low blood sugars, but you don't feel them coming on. It's unfortunate because I think that CGMs can be really helpful for people. So hopefully insurers will start to see the benefit and pay for it for more people.
Yeah, definitely. Like I think pretty much most diabetics think that if you have any type of diabetes, you should just be on a CGM because they really, I mean, there's a variety beyond just testing your blood sugar. There's a variety of things that can help track trends. You can connect your system, like your doctor, you can give them approval to access it. So like my doctors can access my Dexcom, excuse me. And so they can look at my blood sugar. I don't have to send them anything. I don't have to log it anymore. I can do all that on the app, and then it just, my doctors can, digitally access that. So like a lot of people, I mean, we can get, this could be a whole episode, so I won't say a whole lot more, but it's just, if you are type 2 or have gestational, like I said, it can be a challenge to get insurance to want to cover that. But it is something you can definitely bring up with your doctor. And I think particularly for people who are blind and low vision, and there might be some challenges with, learning how to poke your finger and get the blood on the strip. I mean, sighted people have a challenge doing that. I did it for years. I was sighted for a long time. So by the time I became blind, it, wasn't super challenging for me, but it can be. And so a CGM is another way to, alleviate that challenge. So it's just something that is out there, and you can always ask your doctor about and see where that goes.
And for me, getting the blood on the strip, I mean, there was, I probably wasted a few strips, especially at the beginning and then every now and again, but eventually you kind of get like the idea of how much and where it's supposed to go. I mean, it's, it happens. I definitely wasted some strips, but it wasn't, not to the point where it was concerning, I guess. Okay, well, we have another question. Okay, so let's see here. Sorry. Okay, so how can people with type 2 diabetes get in more calories when they don't have time to sit down and eat and they don't necessarily feel hungry, but then they end up feeling run down at the end of the day? So it sounds like some moms who again, they're extremely busy. They may not have time to sit down and have a proper meal. They may not even feel hungry, but at the end of the day, they realize that they didn't get enough calories and they didn't, eat the way they should have.
Well, first of all, I'd say if you're feeling sluggish at the end of the day, I would definitely check your blood sugar to see if your blood sugar is low. Sometimes feeling, sort of tired and sluggish can be a symptom of low blood sugar. So I would definitely keep an eye on that. But it is difficult to eat when you are busy and when you're not hungry, which I think is another problem a lot of folks have. So in type 2 diabetes, 2 things can happen. If you're on a medication certain medications that lower your blood sugar can lead to low blood sugar if you don't eat enough. But the other thing that can happen with type 2 diabetes in particular is if you skip meals, so you don't have any sugar coming in, your liver can go a little crazy and make more sugar than you need. There's sort of a miscommunication between your pancreas and your brain and your liver. So your liver kind of churns out, a meal and a half worth of sugar because you didn't eat, and that can make your sugar high. So biggest point is to try to make sure you're eating, at least 3 times during the day. One of my favorite tricks is if you don't have time to eat and you're busy or you're not hungry, is to think about having some liquid calories, preferably healthy ones. So maybe some milk or maybe a smoothie or something of that nature where you can just drink it down. You can prepare a whole blender full of smoothies, the day before in the evening, and then you can have them throughout the day. So that's something, it's liquid, something and faster, because you don't have to sit down. You can juggle all those crazy things moms have to juggle and still be able to get some kind of calories in there. Other, tricks might be like a granola bar or just something that's snacky, but still provides some, reasonable nutrition.
Okay. So Lynn, for families who are really active, have a lot going on, maybe you have older kids who are in activities, maybe you work a lot, whatever the case may be. What are some kind of tips and recommendations for meal planning for the week?
Yeah, that can be so challenging when you've got kids all in different directions and you're working and it's late when you get home. So some things you can consider are on a day of the week where it's less busy, whether it's a Saturday or Sunday, if you could dedicate a couple hours to doing food prep for the week. And that could be basically cutting up fruits and vegetables. You can make a lot of your grain dishes. Like let's say you're going to have rice or quinoa. You could make that in advance and just keep it in your refrigerator. And the same thing for cooking meats. You could, roast a chicken or, cook some salmon or prepare some meals with ground meat on that weekend and then have them for the week. Now, if you're not going to eat it until Thursday or Friday, you probably want to put it in the freezer. Leftovers or, meals that are already cooked should really stay in the fridge for no more than 3 days. The other key is to fill the freezer up with some pre-made foods like, meatloaf. Whenever I make a meatloaf, I make 2 because you can easily freeze meatloaf and just defrost it and warm it up and you're ready to have a whole meal. So that's kind of a trick to make extra when you do cook and throw it in the freezer.
And also I like doing things like the slow cooker too. Because one, if you're not going to be home all day, it's fine. You can let it go. But also it's just, you can make a lot of stuff that you can have for a couple of meals. And so I'm always a fan of the slow cooker. There's a cookbook and you can actually find it on Bard I believe it's called Not Your Mother's Slow Cooker Cookbook. And so it kind of has, it has some modern twist on things you can make in a slow cooker, a lot of different kind of ethnic type dishes. So yeah, that's been really nice.
And when all else fails, we just put leftover meat in omelets and call it breakfast for dinner. If we just have even leftover pork chops and we're okay, we need to eat these, we'll just pork chop omelet,
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. And it can be simple too. I think especially for maybe people who aren't used to cooking, it can be maybe an overwhelming thing. And it's you can find very simple recipes that are healthy, but simple, only a few ingredients. And, like Stacy said, even just an omelet, you can do things that don't have to be, we're not doing, Julia Child level cooking. you do things that are very simple and basic, but kind of still making it, on you. You don't have to be like me and do everything from scratch, because there's times where I'm why am I doing this from scratch? I just gave myself more work than I needed to do. So I think sometimes just doing what's basic and simple can really be great and delicious at the same time.
And obviously you have to take your own dietary needs into consideration.
Yes.
Too many eggs, if your doctor has cautioned you against eggs might not be a good deal, but we find omelets, especially on nights where we're super busy, because they're quick, they're easy to make. You can put vegetables in them. You can put, you know, a little ham or, you know, tomatoes, I mean, whatever it is that you like, and it's kind of quick.
Yeah, my two favorite, like in, you know, quick meals are usually I make spaghetti sauce from scratch, but you don't have to. When I make it from scratch, though, I make a big pot of it and I freeze it.
Yeah.
So, you know, using like either that or like jarred spaghetti sauce with some ground meat and some pasta, and dinner's ready.
Yep.
Yep.
My mom did, and I think it made her grocery shopping a lot easier, was she would have like each week, one night would have, you know, some form of chicken. You know, it could be made different ways, but it started with chicken. And one night was ground meat, you know, and things like that. So when she went to the store, she always knew, I need to buy a pack of chicken, and I need to buy, I think, ground beef, and I need to buy some pork chops. And it was also easier too, because if she bought in bulk and put it in the freezer, she knew she was going to use it, which I thought was pretty ingenious. I don't do that, but I've always thought that that method was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now, so now the other side of the spectrum, what about the people who, you know, especially over the past year when many of us have been stuck more than usual, or, you know, maybe you're a parent who's at home with young children, how do you keep from eating all day out of boredom, or out of stress, or, you know, out of emotions? I know for me, especially if I'm stuck in the house all day, I'll end up eating even when I'm not hungry, just because it's some sort of stimulation or it's something to do. How can you help stave off that? Or how can you help correct that?
Yeah, that is really challenging. I think that a couple things might help. You know, one, put yourself on a schedule the same way we do for our children. You know, usually there's a time for meals and a time for snacks, so that at least you're limiting yourself to a particular snack time. Like I always get hungry around 3 o'clock. It doesn't matter every day. So 3 o'clock, I have a snack. But avoid eating in the middle. Just tell yourself, okay, it's gonna be mealtime or snack time soon. I just have to wait. The second trick is if you feel like you just need to munch on something, is munch on something healthy. Like think about like baby carrots or some popcorn or something that's going to be kind of filling but lower in calories, right? Not the Chips Ahoy cookies.
Oh, darn it.
Yeah. And the thing that I always used to do too, because, you know, the kids, you know, you like to have something around that your kids like as a treat. We always had a shelf in the cupboard that was the kids' shelf. And that's where we'd put, like, if they had Oreos or, you know, whatever, graham crackers. And somehow them having their own shelf, I wouldn't take things off that shelf because I had bought that for the kids.
Right.
And I know it sounds crazy, but it actually works. So sometimes just doing that to avoid eating those treats that maybe you bought your kids, those fruit gummies, you know, that.
Right. I'm actually pretty good at that. It's the snacking in between when I do set times and say, all right, I'm going to eat 3 meals and 3 snacks today. It goes well. But then when I forget about this, it's, you know, my other thing is for me, I'll eat so well during the day. I'll make smart choices. I'll like really think about things. I'll eat mindfully. And then at 9 p.m., it's like, get out the chocolate Reese's peanut butter egg bag and eat like 7 of them. Like I have great intentions and like I enjoy healthy food. I know how to eat well, but then the kids go to bed and I'm watching Netflix and like out comes the junk.
We've all been there.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I think one thing that can help is some people set like a deadline for eating during the day. Just
smart.
After 8 p.m., I'm not going to eat anymore. Like that's it for the day. And then maybe have something that you do during that time to help. Like I had one gentleman, this was really interesting. He had never been a tea drinker, but he decided, it wasn't that he was opposed to it. He just normally drank it. And so he would have at night after his time that he set for himself, he would make tea. And that was what he used to kind of treat himself and fill up. So sometimes having like that one thing you save, you know, I do diet ginger ale. That's my treat after a certain period of time.
So now with the tea though, is that caffeinated though? Or did he buy like decaf?
No, he did
tea, or
decaf.
how did he? Okay.
Decaf.
I was gonna say I'd be up till 4 a.m.
Well, I heard years ago that when you're feeling hungry, to really consider, where are you feeling that from? Like, is it truly from your stomach? Or if it's not, it's probably more kind of in your head. And so, like, because I always ask my husband that question. I'm like, is your stomach actually telling you you're hungry? But so I don't know if that's really true, but that was something I was told years ago, to kind of really think about, where's your hunger coming from? Like, do you feel those hunger pains, that kind of grumbling in your tummy? And if you don't, then, maybe you really don't need the snack.
Or is it just that you saw a McDonald's commercial?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
I also find drinking water helpful. Like, if I start feeling like I need to eat something, or I need, especially something sugary, I'll drink water, and I'm like, actually, that staved it off pretty well. I mean, nothing's going to make up for a delicious cupcake or something, but I mean, water actually, for me, it does. Like, when I find myself wanting something, but I know I'm not truly hungry, water is
and one trick that can help is to do something to distract yourself. Something other than the activity that makes you hungry, if possible, and then wait a half an hour. And if after a half an hour you're still hungry, like you feel it in your tummy, you probably are hungry, and you just need to have, preferably something healthy, like a piece of fruit would be good. Not the Reese's peanut butter eggs that we should. I have them sitting in the room, and I'm trying to save them for Easter. So.
Well, and also like skipping meals is obviously going to make you hungrier later and more inclined to kind of want to eat everything in sight. And so I think, because I'm kind of the other end. I don't eat enough in a day. So like I always have to work on, because I've never been a big breakfast person. So I'm like, I have to have even a yogurt, just, kind of make myself eat something, so that, I'm getting the calories I need. But also, by lunch, I'm not, super hungry, but, so I think for anybody, there's always that balancing act, but I also know you have to give yourself grace too. So, it's like, if you had the peanut butter egg, don't beat yourself up about it. Just, you have a whole other day to make better choices. So
absolutely. Yeah. And if you did splurge the night before, it's really not gonna, it's not the end of the world. Just start anew the next day. It's absolutely right.
I read this thing. It was actually on a Facebook meme, and it was several years ago, and it stuck with me, and it's helped me to this day. And I know it may sound simplistic, but for me, it works. It talks about how if you you see a bunch of cupcakes and you're like, oh, I'm going to eat them. And then you just feel super guilty. You're like, oh, I've just ruined everything. And it recommended, if you see something delicious, say to yourself, wow, those cupcakes look delicious. I bet they're going to taste really good. And I trust myself to eat one responsibly, and just take one and just acknowledge and not feel bad about doing it, but feel fine about doing it. Saying, whatever, that piece of pie, that pie looks so good. I think it's going to taste delicious, and it smells good. And think of it in a good way, not like ooh, I got to stay away from that. And just say, I trust myself. I am going to make a decision to eat a piece of that pie. And then you're kind of owning it, more than feeling guilty from the beginning and then feeling terrible about yourself because you ate half the pie. So I don't know. It sounds simplistic, but it actually, thinking about it that way has helped me.
Yeah, because you're giving yourself positive permission. Please go ahead and have it and eat it mindfully so you really enjoy it. And that's great.
And just the thought of when you stop enjoying the taste and the smell, stop. When you're just eating it mechanically, stop,
Yeah.
So I don't know, that sort of helped me.
Well, and I always say this to other diabetics, but it really kind of applies to everyone. It's kind of about adjusting the way we think about food, because instead of being like, oh, why can't I eat the whole pie? Why can't I eat 6 cupcakes? It's just say, well, no, I can eat these things. I just have to do it in moderation. One cupcake is plenty for anybody, a slice of pie is good for anybody. So I think sometimes it's not easy, but, just getting ourselves adjusted to a different way of, thinking about food that way, do you need to supersize? Obviously anybody's fine eating a regular size, combo meal from McDonald's. And so I think, instead of like feeling bad that you can't have something, understanding that like you can have things, it's just we need to, reconsider what a serving size is and eating in moderation.
Well, and even thinking about like what we were talking about, the Reese's eggs, which are currently my, my Achilles heel. It's like when I think about it, I can say to myself, you know what, before I take Leo to soccer practice, I'm going to enjoy one and it's going to be delicious. Like I'm going to enjoy one, like, and I will take one and I can look forward to it and it'll be tasty, instead of saying, oh, I'm going to try not to eat anymore till Easter for me, and then end up eating like half the bag and feeling terrible, like kind of factor in like, I want one, so I'm going to eat one responsibly. We do my lovely free Zoom trial or Zoom session is going to end. So we have 2 more quick questions to get through. Now, somebody did ask about accessible fitness and nutrition apps. And I know we've talked in advance that none of us really know a whole lot about those. The one that I could recommend is the app for the Fitbit. Even if you don't have the Fitbit itself, the app can be helpful for tracking like how many calories a day you eat. It has I would go to Starbucks and I would find, tall vanilla latte or something, or tall non-fat vanilla latte. And I could find it in the app and it would plug it in and it would then say exactly how many calories I'd had. And so that I did find that helpful for tracking calories, and you don't need to have a Fitbit to use it. Although having a Fitbit just makes it more functional, because then it counts your steps. It helps balance out the calories you've taken in versus the calories you've taken out. Bridget or Lynn, do you have any other ones that you use or recommend that are accessible?
I haven't used it in a while, but I used to, and I know other people who do, the MyFitnessPal app, and it's pretty accessible with VoiceOver. So that is one, and it does the same thing, like, can count calories. It can count like carbs too. You can, search for foods and plug it in. I believe it can do things like it can do a lot of things. Like you can plug in like how much water you drink in a day. So it does a lot of the same things. And it in the past was very accessible.
Excellent. And Lynn, final question. So if people who are listening to this say, you know what, this has really given me a lot to think about, I would love to be able to meet with a dietitian to talk about my particular situation, or to maybe help me meal plan in a way that works for me, or help me figure out, why I'm not feeling as healthy as I could be. How can they go about working with a dietitian? Like, how can they get that process started?
Yeah, so you can always ask your primary care doctor if they have a registered dietitian they refer to. Most hospitals will have dietitians, but not always do they see people who are not in the hospital. So it just depends. To find a dietitian that's, can see people who aren't in the hospital, another trick is to go to the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics website, which is Eat Right. That's EATRIGHT.com. And you'll see on the home page, there's a little box that says find a dietitian, and you just plug in your zip code and it will give you a list of dietitians in your area. Unfortunately, insurance may or may not pay for you to see a dietitian. Mm-hmm. Typically, they're only paying for people who have diabetes or kidney failure. If you're just looking to lose weight or something like that, you may end up having to pay out of pocket. So I just give you that warning. We've been working on that for years and will continue to, because I believe that anybody who wants to see a dietitian should be able to.
Yeah. Preventative. I mean, it's just good health.
Yeah.
Now, what about people if you have like high cholesterol, or is that something that you could ask your doctor, like, hey, I have high cholesterol, could I have like a consult with a dietitian?
Absolutely. So any medical problem that you need to adjust your eating for, whether it's high cholesterol, maybe you have gluten sensitivity, or, anything like that, you can definitely refer to a dietitian. And also dietitians, will see you for things like weight management, but again, weight management isn't usually covered.
So we always end each time with, Lynn, if you could give blind parents one piece of advice, and it can be on anything. It can be on food. I know you have teenagers. What one piece of advice would you give to blind parents?
I think the biggest and most important piece of advice I could give is to trust yourself. You are a good parent and you have instincts that will help guide you in what you do. So just follow those instincts and trust in yourself, because you're a wonderful parent and you can do this.
Excellent.
Let's cut that out. Excuse me.
Yeah, we can't have coughing on here. People
I
will think they're going to get the corona from us through their screen.
Oh my God. Yes. Yeah. Via Zoom. Yes. It's not corona. We're in that day and age where it's like you cough and you're like, I don't have it. I don't have it. I swear.
But no, you're like, at least you're on Zoom. So it's like, yeah, I have corona, but it's cool for you.
Sure, yeah. Okay. Anyway,